So basically, thank you so much for sitting down with me, for having this conversation with me. It's just going to be a discussion between the two of us, obviously stemming from your incredible book that I read and reread, and some of the wisdom that you've shared in it. And so I'll just be asking some questions, and we can just kind of have a dialogue back and forth and share your wisdom and knowledge and to create more awareness, because I think that there's just so much, as you know, there's so much going on in the world right now, and especially with Indigenous populations and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that a lot of people have no idea about a lot of the stuff that is happening. And I think it's just really important to be able to talk about these things and raise awareness and all that kind of stuff so that people can hopefully join in on, preserving Indigenous cultures, in remembering. I really love the idea that we are all under a collective amnesia, really not remembering about our roots, where we come from, the Indigenous ways of living and practices and all of that kind of stuff. And I know I've been on my own awakening journey in the last few years, and books like yours have really sparked a lot for me to digest, to think about, to then share with others, what I'm learning. And I know how powerful the ripple effects of that is. So I'll do a little mini intro into you, and then I'll just get you to kind of introduce a little bit about yourself. But so you're Romanjanes, and you've been living and learning and working closely with Indigenous Peruvian cultures in the Amazon and Andes since 2001. He's the co-founder of the Institute, stewarding 4,000 acres of land in the Mapacho Valley of the Peruvian Andes, a sanctuary for ecological preservation, sacred plant wisdom, and cultural exchange. His work has been featured in the Sacred Science documentary, and he now travels between Peru and the US, offering teachings that merge Eastern and Indigenous wisdom in powerful ways. So welcome, welcome. Anything you want to share about yourself?
Thank you so much, Abigail. Well, I think you covered the essence of it. And essentially, I've been on the path of learning how to be a human being in a human body. That's what my teachers have always encouraged me to focus on.
Mhm.
And I have been working with the indigenous tradition, studying with them, and finding ways to encourage them to remain in that state of being in their heritage that they can share with the world. The world today needs it more than ever. And of course, that has also been my process and my own path of healing throughout the last 2 decades. Initially, it started with a physical health condition that was a genetic and incurable in the Western medicine health condition, but then it went much deeper than that into intergenerational trauma resolution and very profound healing on the psychological level, and then seeing how we are so connected to each other within our society,
Yeah.
where I end and others begin is a very fine line. And so
Mm-hmm.
to see how deeply interconnected we all are, and one's own healing can impact the healing of others. And I'm very grateful to be a
Mm-hmm.
part of that and share that with you also, because I know you have been on a very profound path, and I've been very inspired by the power of your vulnerability. And that's so essential within the indigenous traditions, is to be empowered in one's own vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
to share one's heart with others, and then that can be so helpful and healing for the world.
Amazing, amazing. That brings me to my first question. Just, I know you've spent decades now, learning from the Indigenous elders, and I know that you have gone through your own, like you said, inner and outer journey of healing. And so, what have been some of the most powerful lessons that they have taught you about healing that the modern world has just forgotten?
Well, one of the most powerful ways that my elders have taught me about healing is that we all heal through each other.
Mm,
And in order for me to heal, I have to honor the healer within everyone, within all the people in my life, and to recognize how, whether people who have been helping me or have been in a way an obstacle on my path, in their own way they have all been encouraging me to return to my innermost essence.
mm,
And so we all heal through each other. And then also, that's how my elders taught me how I can also help others. It's not like I'm going to heal someone else. I have to honor them within their own wisdom. I have to recognize each person's inner teacher and learn from that. And
Mm-hmm.
by doing that, I recognize the highest in each individual. And
Mm.
then naturally, then the healing unfolds within myself and within others. So
Yeah,
it's not like I'm the healer and they're the patient, but actually, I've been taught to recognize my patients as my own teachers and
wow.
heal my own life. And through that, they are able to heal.
Incredible. I know that, when you're immersed in the people and the culture and the teachers, it's easy. It can be easier to kind of integrate a lot of this, but for people like for myself who I'm far away from my homelands, my ancestral lands, I actually haven't been back to, my parents are from El Salvador. I haven't been back there for over 20 years. It's been a really long time. How can we honor, these teachings where we live, even when we're far away from the lands? Like, what are some things that you have, because you travel and all of that kind of stuff, and you meet with other people who are also, away from maybe their homelands and their elders and all of that kind of stuff. Like what are some ways that we are able to kind of honor these teachings and even learn about them? How does someone even just start to learn about, kind of their ways of living and teaching and all of that kind of stuff when we're far away from the lands?
Mm. Well, nature is who we are.
Mm,
And you shared that just before how it is this journey of remembering. It is something that we have forgotten as a collective, this spiritual amnesia. We have forgotten how to come back into our heart, how not to hide in the mind all the time.
mm,
And so this is something that is always present with us. And my teachers have repeatedly encouraged me to recognize how this is one Mother Earth, this is one ecosystem that we are all sharing no matter where we are. Within that ecosystem, we are all interconnected. And
mm,
the essential human qualities, they are the cornerstones of our civilization.
mm,
Our human civilization has developed and evolved through collaboration, through developing these noble qualities that we can get to share in the face of adversity
mm,
and recognize our interconnectedness. Those are all aspects of the indigenous wisdom traditions. And of course, they are also aspects of our own innocence.
mm,
And so in my book, my attempt was to also draw the bridges and see this connection between how our entire civilization has fallen from grace in a way since ancient times and all of those legends and the myth creation stories of the indigenous people. They point that out how all of humanity once upon a time used to live in this very profound heart-centered state, and love used to reign all over the world. There were no wars, there were no conflicts, there were no diseases or sicknesses, because everyone abided in this unconditional heart state.
mm,
And then, of course, people were able to awaken their highest potential by humbly sharing it with each other and encouraging each other. It wasn't kind of the dog eat dog world
yeah.
that we are witnessing today, but it was everyone humbly sharing their highest potential with each other. And then naturally, everyone were able to discover their gifts, their qualities, their talents that they could freely share with the world. And then people were capable of things that would defy our imagination today,
Mm,
right? All kinds of extrasensory powers. And then gradually people started to forget the heart centered state that it all came from and became obsessed with the supernatural abilities and powers and all kinds of external accomplishments.
mhm,
And this is mirrored through each one of our lives as
mhm,
we grow up in society today, in this society that is fragmented, that is based on duality and division. And as I've been traveling here in the Western world, in the US, I recognize how I have a little bug. It just jumped on me. I'm used to being in the Amazon rainforest and stuff.
They gravitate to you.
I had a sort of massive
Yeah.
uh, reaction.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I just see how in our modern society there's so much division and there is this identity crisis in our society today where the lack of rites of passage that are so essential in the indigenous world, they create a lot of confusion in people and prevent people from maturing and developing and evolving and learning how to think for oneself and not being so easily manipulated by the media or the propaganda or whatever is happening, peer pressure.
Mm.
And so this is something that we can cultivate no matter where we are. And I have friends in Mexico that have opened up orphanages for children from very troubled families. I have friends here in the United States also that for inner city youth, for troubled youth, they're developing different programs that where they take them into nature. Sometimes for the first time in their lives, the kids from the cities, they're able to be in nature,
Hmm.
just a national park or even go camping or white water rafting trip.
Hmm.
And then I have friends that also take kids from the United States that are not so familiar with the ancient cultures or things like that. They take them to different places around the world, whether it's the Himalayas or the Andes or the Amazon rainforest. And so I see how meaningful that is to develop those collaborations where we can also collaborate and engage with the role models in our society today that kids look up to, but instead of role models in our society advertising the superficial things that are
Yeah.
popular, they can actually encourage children to honor nature, to honor the ancestral wisdom traditions, to remember what it means to be human. And
Yeah.
so I see that no matter where we are interconnected, and we have all known once upon a time, we have all abided in this essential state of innocence that the indigenous people honor so much. And
Mm.
it's that seed of innocence that the indigenous people recognize to be the indigenous soul of all of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see that in that way we are all helping each other to collectively remember, and we can do it no matter where we are because nature is who we are, and we sometimes forget that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you brought up children because I obviously have four children. They're 7 and under. They're very small and very curious. And, as I've been on my reclamation journey and learning about, traditions and practices and nature and all of that kind of stuff, I'm teaching them what I'm learning as I go, and they are absorbing it like sponges. And for them, they don't question it. They don't it doesn't have to make sense. They just kind of accept it, right? Like how, for example, we'll go on nature walks and we'll see a big, beautiful tree that looks, like it's been there for a long time. And, I'll stop, I'll pause for a little moment and I'll bring them over and I'll tell them, like, this tree is it's ancient. It's been here for a long time and it has energy, that we can feel. We can feel the tree has actual energy. And it was the most innocent and beautiful little thing that happened one day when I was explaining them this. And my 5-year-old son, he put his hand on the tree. And then I told him to close his eyes. And, I'm like, close your eyes, just put your hand on the tree and take a nice deep breath. And so he took a deep breath. I'm like, do you feel the energy? He's like, yeah, mama. And I was like, where do you feel it? He said, right here, like in his heart space, And I was like, yeah, I'm like, and it's just like, it was just this really beautiful moment. And, they remember those things. So then on their day-to-day life, when we're going on walks and all that kind of stuff, they ask questions and, they say hi to Mother Earth and like all these kind of things, right? And it's really beautiful and innocent, but at the same time can be so profound because so many of us, especially in the generation that we're living now, where everything is technology, everything is, screens and things like that, you're seeing less and less children going out and forming that relationship with nature, with our great mother. Everything is getting replaced with, just like isolation and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I just see how detrimental that can be. Even me growing up in the 80s, 90s, we still had a little bit of, being outside and being together and, and all of that kind of stuff. And that's becoming just more, I guess like less and less I'm starting to see, and so I think that's why it's so important that it starts in our own homes and with sharing with them these truths, and answering the questions as they come, because children are so curious, right? And so yeah, really, really beautiful. I love that. And I have been on this reconnection journey of, the great mother and nature and all of that kind of stuff. And, I'm a trauma survivor. So I grew up with a lot of stuff, and I've been on this healing and recovery journey for 11 years. And this last couple of years, since I've kind of started to reconnect with the indigenous ways and with my ancestors and all of that kind of stuff, the profound healing that comes through, something so simple as just walking outside barefoot, bringing an offering, to Mother Earth, whether it's flowers, whatever it is, and I sit there and I just, breathe in the air, and the connection with the ground, it is so healing and like so simple. And people think, like, when I try to explain this to them, they're just like really? And I'm like, yeah, like it's just like I can't explain it. There's just something like so deep and beautiful that happens when we sit in stillness in nature and we kind of form that relationship. You're starting to form that relationship with time. And so yeah, and I know that you've had your own, kind of profound journey with all of that. And one thing that I really like that you speak on, and even in your book, you mentioned about the power of creating intercultural bridges that really uplift Indigenous people. But in this day and age where everything is extractive, like when people, and especially tourists and things like that, when they go to places and they want to, yeah, like they want to experience, certain aspects of Indigenous culture, whether it's plant medicines, whether it's, different kind of ceremonies, it can become very extractive, where they just kind of pick and choose little pieces of what they like and what they want to learn about. What does a responsible and reciprocal bridge look like, especially for those who have privilege and maybe platforms? Like, for example, myself, I recognize that I have a certain level of privilege. I have a platform, I have dual citizenship, I speak, two languages, like certain things that I recognize I have privilege in, and I want to use that privilege responsibly to be able to raise awareness, to be able to center, voices who are doing incredible work, those kind of things, right? And so, what's a way that yeah, like how can we do this responsibly and in a way that's reciprocal with the Indigenous peoples without, falling into the traps of extraction and tokenizing and all those kind of things?
That's a very powerful question.
Mhm.
And I have also 5 and 8-year-old. I have two boys.
Oh, I love
So I
that.
can relate because I do see that it is the future generations. They are the guardians of the earth. And then, yeah, how to really connect our children to this essential innate wisdom that they have within them, and our society is forgetting today. And then children grow up in kind of social isolation and in front of the screens and not really playing outside or engaging with other children. And again, that is the wisdom that the indigenous people carry so beautifully and naturally. They still abide in that state. And sometimes they're not able to conceptually explain it because they intuitively embody that wisdom.
Mm,
And then people in our world today, like what you mentioned, of course, we have this capacity to relate, to translate, to bridge. My Quero elders from the Andes, they speak about this ancient Quero prophecy. It's called Chacaruna in Quechua, which is
mm,
the bridge people.
mm,
And they speak about a time, and that was a prophecy from ancient times, how there will be people that will come from the outside, and the people will be the bridges this kind of like in other traditions also they have this kind of like the rainbow tribe, the multicolored
Mm,
people that are the bridges of the world. And we come to these traditions, and if we find benefit in these traditions, then it's so important to reciprocate.
mm,
And in that way, we can also start to share those benefits. And in these traditions, who you are, the essential nature of who we are, that we are remembering, it can never be possessed, it can never be
okay.
grasped, it can only be shared. And the more we share it, the more we experience it.
Mm,
And
mhm,
so, in that way, for me, the indigenous traditions, and that's also how I wrote my book with that prayer in my heart so that I can bring that benefit back to them because I am so grateful. I probably wouldn't have been alive if it wasn't for the indigenous wisdom traditions from the Amazon and also the Andes. And I'm also grateful for my Tibetan teachers to guide me through some of those kind of obscure ancestral mystery initiation schools.
mhm,
And then all these years I've been carrying the prayer, how can I reciprocate? How can I truly benefit those people?
yeah.
In our Western world, sometimes there is this mentality of you see a problem, you throw money at it.
Mm,
And
mm,
in my experience, it is not helpful.
mhm,
It actually disempowers the indigenous people. It teaches them to live with this kind of begging mentality, and then they don't really trust in their own power. They're not able to find the capacity to return to their independence, to their sovereignty. And
mm,
so then throughout the years, I've been contemplating and meditating how can I truly reciprocate that? Because I am so grateful. And then out of the place of gratitude, also not because I feel like I owe them something or, yeah, it's this reciprocity that comes from gratitude.
mm,
And
mhm,
then how can I truly empower them? And so then I dedicated my book, and all the proceeds from my book they go towards developing an ancestral school for the children of the Yagua tribe, and the book is about the Yagua tribe and their tradition. And that's another thing. Many tribes today they struggle to adapt into our modern society. Like
mhm,
some tribes in the Amazon, for example, they have been able to adapt a little bit easier because they used to be the merchants of the ancient world and they knew how to adapt and into different circumstances and environments, such as the Shipibo people, for example. But
mhm,
then other tribes they really struggle, and so the Yagua people are one of those tribes where they have one of the most elaborate myth creation stories and cosmologies and the intricacies within their tradition, and yet they don't know how to share it with our world. They don't know how to find support for themselves. And then gradually it's disappearing.
yeah.
And it's been really sad for me to witness over the years how they are going through cultural extinction, where they are just doing, their shows for the tourists, and
Mm,
otherwise they are in survival mode. They don't have time to focus on maintaining their heritage and tradition. And then they have escaped from slavery just 50 years ago. They were slaves to Colombian robber barons,
mm,
and so they are struggling, they're surviving. Tourists come and they dance for them and they do this show, and then they swarm them with trinkets, and that's the only reason why they maintain their culture, or that's the only time that they have to maintain it.
yeah.
Otherwise they are in survival mode, and they're um, very empowered. They're considered to be one of the most impoverished populations in
Mm,
South America.
yeah.
And so then to develop the ancestral school for their children and to support their tribe. So I've also developed this children's book as part of the eco-socio-emotional curriculum for the tribe. I have a copy of it here.
Mhm, I love that.
see it.
Hmm.
But I also donated this book to the tribe, and then they share it with their children, and also they can sell it to the visitors. And then the proceeds from the children's book goes towards health emergency fund and education fund for their children. And then
Hmm.
also to empower them to develop different formulas of medicinal plants that they know, and they can offer that to the visitors
Hmm.
instead of the trinkets.
Hmm.
And they can find ways that the world today needs it so much. It
Yeah.
needs that wisdom of the indigenous people, how to just be, right? How not to be something or to try to get somewhere or accomplish anything, but to just be. We have
Mm.
forgotten that simple and yet such profound wisdom. What you
Mm.
shared with your 5-year-old when he was touching the tree, right? That it's that wisdom of being
Mhm.
that allows us to be receptive, that allows us to be open, and then we can find resolution to so many of the issues that are plaguing our society today just through being.
Yeah.
I find that that's so important because it's this heart-centered state that in our society today is often ignored, and
Yep.
um, for the indigenous people it has very practical connotation.
Hmm.
So if I'm abiding in my heart, I can approach the problems, the adversity in my life in a more objective way. If I'm getting overwhelmed by my emotions, and I'm not able to open my heart to what I'm experiencing, I cannot really cultivate objectivity
Mm.
in my life,
Yeah.
and then I cannot really see clearly how to approach the resolution of whether it's conflicts with other people or my inner conflicts. And so in these traditions, that's the most essential, is to learn how to be.
Mm.
It's the being before doing. We are not human doings.
Yeah.
We are
Exactly.
human beings.
Exactly. And you're so right. It's so many, like, it's one of the hardest things for so many of us to do is just to be, like in a world where everything, productivity is everything, and, hustle culture and all of that kind of stuff. And even when, for example, for myself, when I'm working through, kind of deep things in my life, and, I'll have a breakthrough, or I'll have, something really significant happened in my life. In the past, I used to just kind of go past those moments and, on to the next and on to the next. And before you know it, like it was a year and I'd gone through all of these significant things in my life, and I haven't given myself the time to actually like integrate it all and, be in stillness and absorb it and all of that kind of stuff. And I would actually get sick. I would get physically sick, and it would force me to pause, and then I would reflect on, like, whoa, like, I'd be a few days in bed or something like that, and finally not doing all these different things, and all of this stuff would start coming up for me. And now I've really learned the power of sacred pause, of really allowing myself for slowness, to fully absorb the things that, and process the things that I've overcome, the conversations, the breakthroughs, all of that kind of stuff. And it's hard. It's really, really hard, especially when we live like, busy Western lives, and especially as parents, we have kids, we have like so many different things that take our attention every day. But it's so important to learn to just be, with ourselves, to allow whatever is coming through to come through, to write about it, sing about it, whatever it is that you need to, kind of finish integrating it, allowing for that. But it's not easy. It's not easy in the world that we live in when everything is go, go, go and hustle and grind culture and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for those insights. You mentioned, and it kind of saddens me, how you've seen in the last few decades a lot of the wisdom keepers or the knowledge kind of fade away, as people pass away, let's say, it kind of dies with them, and then the children aren't learning these things to be able to pass it down and continue, kind of these lineages and all of that kind of stuff. What do you think is, what are some steps that people can do, like, for example, like myself, can do to be better stewards of the sacred, of like, these kind of sacred traditions, practices, knowledge, all of that kind of stuff? Like, how can we help to steward this so that it doesn't, fade away, so that it doesn't, disappear.
Mm. Yeah, and this is something that also you mentioned. It's through this inner journey that each one of us has to honor in our lives. And in that way, we start to actually listen more to the wisdom elders of the indigenous world traditions. And we start to see that direct practical application in our own individual lives. And you mentioned you are a trauma survivor, and I've had my own share in life, and with the illnesses, the sicknesses. That's how my teachers um, taught me, is that actually it's not the problem, this physical illness. That's not the actual problem. The physical illness can actually be a wake-up call from
Mm,
Mother Nature. It can be that blessing in disguise that helps me to come out of this hamster wheel
mhm,
of society, so to speak, and create the sacred pause.
mhm,
And then start to honor the essential meaning and purpose of my own life that is outside of being this ant and generic conveyor belt of society.
yeah.
And recognize the higher purpose and meaning, right? Each one of us, we have that hero's journey
Mm,
that is much greater than our role in society. It's
mm,
our purpose in the universe.
yeah.
and and then we are forgetting that in our society today, and that's what is causing mass psychosis. In my opinion, I'm also a student of Jung, and he often pointed that out, is that um, in today's world we are forgetting that there is another purpose to our lives,
Yeah.
and where we are more than just what we are experiencing in everyday world. And
Mm,
it's that mythical journey of the hero where we are our whole life is that longing to return to the sacred, to
mm,
honor the divine, the great spirit, however we can call it.
mhm,
And so that purpose is much greater than our purpose in society, than our role in society, so to speak.
mhm.
And it's so essential to honor that rather than just trying to adapt ourselves to the immediate circumstances, but to recognize what is my heart calling for? What are those dreams that I sometimes doubt in myself?
Mhm,
And then how can we help each other remember, right? Keep each other accountable, remind each other. As you mentioned, it's so hard in the world today because it's so easy to forget. There's so many distractions and everything is moving so fast and so much is happening. And it's also the power of community.
mhm,
And actually, Abigail, I've watched a little some of your videos on your social media page, and I see that you are being mentor to many young women in the community. And in that way, you are being a channel of your ancestors, right?
mhm,
They speak intuitively through you.
mhm,
As you are remembering yourself, you're returning to the indigenous wisdom that all of humanity used to abide in
mhm.
ancient times.
Thank you. Thank you for that acknowledgement. It's definitely an honor and a privilege for me to um share what I'm learning, because I find it very useful and valuable. And then when I do share it with others, they also find value and usefulness in it, right? Because we are living in, one of the hardest times ever, like just with everything happening and there's so much uncertainty and chaos and disconnection. The biggest thing I've noticed is the extreme disconnection that we are plagued by as a society, from not only ourselves, each other, and of course, our great mother, that major disconnection. And when we walk around in life disconnected in that way, that's where, we have so many sicknesses and mental issues and all of that kind of stuff because we're not meant to walk this life on our own, suffering by ourselves, and thinking we're the only ones and all of that kind of stuff. And community is so important to me. It's something that, and it's interesting that you mentioned about the ancestors kind of guiding through me because early on in my recovery journey, one of the most powerful ways that I was able to heal was in community, was in sitting in circle with other survivors who had experienced things that I had experienced, you know, maybe not exactly the same, but they knew, we all kind of knew, we could understand through each other our pain. And it was so incredibly healing to me, coming from a place where I thought I was the only one, that no one could ever understand what I'd been through, all of those kind of things, right? And that really planted a seed for me in those times when I was going through those support circles and healing circles and all of that kind of stuff. It planted a seed to me how powerful it was to sit in community and heal together. And that's been one of my life's missions now, where I love to create community. I love to create circles, that kind of thing where we can all come together and share knowledge and wisdom with each other and hear stories, you know, the ancient ways of healing, you know, which is sitting in community, sharing story, wisdom, all of that kind of stuff. It's so, so powerful and so beautiful. And it's something that has been lost for a very, very long time. And I see the major need for it, right? Because isolation is a killer. You know, that's what causes so many ailments and all of sorts of things. I can go on for days talking about that, but thank you for sharing that. So the title of your book, it really, really caught. So let me first share with you how I came about your work and your book and all of that kind of stuff, because I don't believe in coincidences. I believe, you know, in synchronicities, and that things happen, you know, the way they're when you listen, when you lean in and listen to the nudges and all of that kind of stuff, it leads you in the most beautiful pathways. So I have been a big fan of Nick Polizzi for a long time. I have, you know, subscribed to his email list and all of that kind of stuff. And I know he puts on a lot of different seminars and workshops and all of that kind of stuff. And I remember watching the Sacred Science documentary, and it was so intriguing. Like, it was so intriguing, and I really enjoyed it. And then I did like a little mini course that he had offered afterwards about like kind of, you know, reconnecting with self and all this stuff. And so anyways, there was an email that he sent out, and he was promoting your book, the Beyond Ayahuasca, and I know that he wrote the foreword to your book. and and I like, it caught my attention right away, right? Because I truly believe that, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like with plant medicines, they kind of call to you, you know, when it's kind of they come in, like they've come into my field. Let's say that, right? Like, there's a little bit of a calling there, and curiosity around, you know, plant medicine and all that kind of stuff, especially as it pertains to my healing journey. And so I saw the title, and he was like, you know, praising, you know, about you and all that kind of stuff. And then I binged the book. I read it in like a few days. Like, I was just like, so like, I couldn't put it down. It was so good, like the journey going through it and all of that kind of stuff, really powerful. And then I found you on social media, and I was like, oh, I'm like, I saw the pages and stuff, and I saw all the work that you're doing, and it was really exciting to me. And then I just, you know, kind of commented on a couple of posts, and then that's how you and I started our interactions and stuff, right? And so it's just kind of like a surreal moment, you know, kind of full circle moment to be here, you know, having this conversation with you, you know. And you know, the title of your book, Beyond Ayahuasca, which I felt was a really powerful invitation. Um, and so like, my question to you is like, what does it mean to go beyond the medicine itself? And how can we carry ceremony into our daily lives?
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Abigail. Um, well, yeah, this, what you touched upon just before, also is very much relevant to this. My elders taught me that that is the most powerful medicine, is the power of the healing circle. It's more powerful than the plant medicines, right? And I do work with sacred plant medicines, and they are integral elements, but it's not what it's all about. They are integral elements within those ancient traditions, but it is really the power of the community, the power of the shared heart, of our collective intention when we are able to bring it together into a focal point. And that is where the greatest healing power is, where we can be vulnerable in each other's eyes, where we don't have to be someone in someone else's eyes. We can just abide in our own natural, vulnerable essence. And Beyond Ayahuasca is pointing towards that. It's this journey of remembrance that has to do with each of our lives. And of course, we can relate that with the ancestral wisdom traditions, and yet it is directly relevant to each of our own lives and how we have distanced ourselves from our empowered innocence and vulnerability. In our modern society, innocence often even has a negative connotation, right? If I'm innocent, if I'm vulnerable, it means someone can take advantage of me and hurt or manipulate me in some ways. And then we all learn in our modern society how to hide behind our personality constructs, behind different roles, different masks in society. And then that brings up the identity crisis, where we are afraid to just be who we are. And so the the book Beyond Ayahuasca, it illustrates this journey that is so much more than just looking for a solution and some kind of a magical potion, or that will solve all of my problems for me, and if I drink a lot of it, then I'll become enlightened. So that's not really how that works, and there are a lot of misconceptions around that in the world today.
Yeah.
And of course, there is this whole kind of new age spirituality that is disconnected from the roots, and it has some good points, but also it brings a lot of confusion for people because it's not really connected on an embodied level
Mhm.
in our practical lives, in our society, which the indigenous people they carry so profoundly within their own everyday life. It's not just some kind of fantasy of some kind of galactic federation that will come to save us, and we don't have to do anything
Yeah.
about it. But it's really this journey of remembrance that we can undertake in our own lives, step by step, by
Mhm.
facing our traumas, by facing the pain, by finding the tools that allow us to trust in our own capacity to do it. Because most people in today's world, they don't even believe that it's possible to be with the pain that they're experiencing. There
Mhm.
is no longer this inherent trust and unconditional power of our hearts to be fully present with all of the challenges, all of the adversities of our lives.
Yeah.
And so the wisdom traditions, they encourage us to return and trust in our innermost truth. In these traditions that I've been studying, the truth is not something from the outside. It's not a philosophical concept. It's an innate state that we know to be real and true more than anything in our lives through experience of our being.
Mhm.
And
Powerful.
so then, yeah, that is the journey. And so the wisdom traditions, they remind us of that. It's not like they tell us how things are and what we should be doing, but they encourage us to honor the wisdom of our own life experience,
Mhm.
to follow the footsteps of our own life experience back to the source of our creative potential, which is the innocence of being.
Mhm.
We spoke about children earlier, and my elders in the Amazon and also the Andes, they told me that that is the greatest wisdom in these traditions, is to remember the childlike essence into old age, not to
Mm.
lose that spark,
Yeah.
that ingenuity, the awe, the wonder of a child, not to
Mhm.
get lost in the concepts and ideas and the rigidity of uh, routine, random kind of life without a higher purpose, but to remember that spark of a child. Because
Mhm.
that is also the key to evolution, I find. What makes the children learn so fast is because they learn through play. And we have forgotten that in our today's society. So this wisdom of the ancestors, again, it's something that we have to remember within ourselves just by returning, by healing the wounded innocence. I also see that all of the problems in today's society, they occur as a result of the wounded innocence of our human civilization
Yeah.
as a whole. And then it's up to each one of us to actually support the greater whole by remembering, by healing ourselves.
Mm. Wow. I love that. I've been, it's interesting you talk about like, kind of almost like in a sense, the gift of our troubles, the gifts in our pain. And I wrote an article once, like one of my first, actually in the co-authored books that I wrote was, the title was The Gift of Pain. And the reason why I titled that was because I have learned to look at, the pain of the pains that I've gone through in my life as gifts. There have been tremendous gifts that have come from overcoming and facing those pains. And it's so powerful to be able to reframe it in that way, because when people understand, some of the things that I've kind of experienced in my childhood and all of that kind of stuff, they could say like, how could you ever think of it that being a gift? Like how could that ever look at like anything good, kind of coming out of that? But I can't change the things that have happened in my life. I can't go back in time and, rewrite all these things. They happened, right? And so now that they've happened, I could either spend my life escaping, the realities that this is what happened and this is the horrible things that I went through and all of that kind of stuff, or I could learn to, explore them and to come to peace around them, have peace around them, and then understand, because of these things, like who am I becoming, who have I become, and what is the medicine and the wisdom that I can take from a lot of these experiences. And that's what I've been able to kind of share in my own work now that I do, helping other women who have gone through similar things that I have, and I can be on the other side and share with them that, like there is hope on the other side. We do heal, we do recover, and we can actually look at it one day as these pains and these struggles as gifts in our life. If we learn, like you said, learn to trust ourselves again, our inner knowing, our inner voice, learn to connect with ourselves, all of that kind of stuff. It's so beautiful when we start that journey. And then it's a lifelong journey. I believe it's truly a lifelong journey. I will never be in a place where I'm going to say I'm healed, I'm done, I've graduated. I know that this is going to be a lifelong practice, and as I continue growing and evolving, more things come to the surface as I'm ready, to kind of look at them and take them on and all of that kind of stuff. And then I have really tried to embody kind of that childlike curiosity while I'm raising my children, because as a cycle breaker, as somebody who's breaking cycles, that, like horrific things that have happened in my both my lineages, um, I'm parenting my children while I'm reparenting myself as well. And so a lot of, because in us there is a little person, an inner child. We hear the concept of an inner child. We all have this inner child inside of us. And unfortunately for me, I never had the opportunity to, be innocent and play and ask questions and do all those things. So now I get to do that with my children. And so as I'm learning, I'm teaching them. And sometimes when I don't know the answers, I'm very honest with them. I said, Mommy doesn't know right now, but let's find out together, and we go on this little journey and all this kind of stuff, right? And it's really a beautiful thing to be able to see how they look at the world, with innocence, with curiosity, with play, and then put myself in that place where I'm doing that with them, right? And it's like it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's also very it's very healing. It's very healing, to be able to see them and see how childhood should look like. It should be playful, it should be fun, it should be safe, all those things, right? And unfortunately for many of us, who grew up in really traumatic households due to addiction, due to intergenerational trauma, all sorts of things, right? Like, unfortunately, many of us didn't get that opportunity, right? And like for me, I turned to drugs and alcohol to kind of numb that for me when I was a teenager. Which led me down a very dark path, and now I've come out of that, and my mission really is to be able to help others, find peace and healing in their own lives, starting with their own homes, so that that ripple effects out into the world, in our communities, and then eventually in the world and all that kind of stuff. Because I believe in the power, the ripple effects that can happen when, one of us, stands up and says, no more, let's, and it ends with me, and I'm gonna rewrite this, and then using all the incredible tools that we have available to us, like learning about our ancestors, our lineage, earth-based practices, all of that kind of stuff. It's really, really beautiful. So thank you so much. I just have one more question for you.
Wait, I
Yes.
just wanna comment that that is so powerful what you just shared.
Mm,
Is how by facing your own darkness, then you can be a light for others.
mhm,
And if I don't really if I'm not able to be with my own suffering, how can I open my heart to the suffering of others? And so in that way, all of those struggles and difficulties, they do become portals for awakening of our highest potential. And that is the power of compassion. And that is the greatest power that I've learned in my life. Of course, we can have all kinds of different powers and gifts and skills, and yet they're all um, they pale in comparison of the power of compassion, the power of the heart, the power of relatedness. Because then I can be open and I can relate to others who feel separated. And I have experienced that separation, and I've opened my own heart in the face of my individual separation, and then I can share that with others. And so I am separate, you are separate, and suddenly we are not so separate anymore because we both share that experience together. We
yeah.
don't have to be isolated within that.
Mm,
And then we can start to awaken and help each other within that, right? And so that is the power of community and how each one of us can do our part within that. And I find that to be so inspiring and so beautiful. And definitely I also don't see that there is an end to this path, and that's what also makes it so beautiful. Otherwise, it's kind of like spiritual materialism, where I'm gonna get to this point where I'm enlightened, and
mhm.
there's no more issues in my life, and I'm just gonna float on a cloud.
Yeah. Actually, I love that you mentioned that because something that I've been playing around with and recently in my own personal journey, and even when I'm talking to clients and stuff, is this concept that, when we come to understand that this is a lifelong journey, this is a lifelong process, we're never going to arrive somewhere, you know, we're living in this human experience in this reality in this world, and we're always there, we're going to be facing challenges always. Like you said, we're never going to be in a place where suddenly there's no more challenges, we're so enlightened that nothing ever happens to us or the people we love or anything like that. That's not possible, right? And so what I've really learned, and this is something that I learned through even in your book, how you speak on this, is really looking at challenges like they are initiations in my life, right? That and it's opened up a whole new world for me, being able to reframe it in that way. Now I actually get excited, when I'm kind of facing certain challenges in my life, instead of being so um discouraged and disempowered by these things happening. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, okay, so this is happening right now. And I kind of take a step back, and it's like, okay, so like, first of all, what are the tools and the resources that I have in my beautiful treasure box and that I've collected through the years that can help me work through this? And who can I become on the other side of this, and how can I help others, through this? And it actually, like, it's become like really, it's almost like in a fun way, even though bad things will happen and stuff like that, bad things. Um, I've looked at them that this is an initiation that I'm walking through that is not only going to help me grow, but it's also going to help others on the other side. And almost every single time that this happens, I will meet somebody, or one of my clients will come to me, and they will freshly be going through a very similar thing. And they'll be in a place where, like, this just happened to me, and it's like, I don't know what to do and all this stuff. And I'm like, it just ends up working out that way. And then I'm able to actually speak to them from a place of like, I know exactly what you're going through. I've been there, and here's what I was able to do to, kind of get through that and all that kind of stuff. And it's been a really amazing reframe for me that has opened up so much possibility, rather than just being like, why me? Like, not this again. Oh, life, like all this kind of stuff, right? It's like, okay, I'm being initiated into something else, and that's gonna not only help me, but it's gonna help other people. And it's almost like a gift. It becomes a gift in a certain way.
It is, and it's that greater motivation, a motivation that is greater than myself. Because if I face my challenges just for my own sake, I often find that it's too little motivation.
Yeah.
But if I do it for a greater purpose, I do it for my children, for all of humanity, for all beings, then that provides such a power of motivation that it
Mm.
helps me to move through my own adversity, my own challenges, so that I can be of benefit to the
Ex-
greater whole. And so
mm.
that there is so much medicine in that.
Yeah,
Thank
love
you
that,
for
love that.
mentioning it.
Amazing. Okay, so I definitely want to be respectful of your time. The last question I have for you is, when we're living in this, like we've talked about throughout our conversation, we live in a time when so many are really seeking purpose. They're seeking reconnection. What role do you believe ancestral remembrance and earth-based practices really play in helping us to reclaim our wholeness?
Well, this is something that I've been reflecting on this idea of sacred activism
Mm,
that has to do with critical mass consciousness. So, if a certain number of individuals remember themselves, a small percentage, then that ripples out into the greater whole, into the collective. And so, in this world of duality and division of one side against the other, and people are hiding behind different isms, um, then this act of simple being becomes a revolutionary protest in
mhm, mhm,
in a way. It's not about protesting, right? I've been reflecting how sacred activism is not about protesting, it's not about one side against the other, but it's about opening the heart to all of the opposites of life, to all of the what initially may seem to be a conflict, then the heart finds a resolution. It's the transcendent third, right? It's something that unites us together instead of
mhm.
just one or the other. And if I'm not with one, then I'm against it, right? That's kind of like the modern mentality,
Yeah.
and it has always kind of got me into trouble because I believe in goodness within people everywhere, beyond identities, beyond separation. And then people would sometimes get offended by that. They would say, "Well, if you're not choosing sides, then you're against us.
Mm,
If you're not with me, you're against me." But for the ancestors, it's really about learning how the heart can hold it all and then learning to find resolution through that. In ancient times, there used to be this art of discourse, of conversation, where people from with opposing points of view would bring the heart into the conversation, and we have forgotten that today.
mhm,
And I find that it's so essential to learn how to maintain the heart-centered presence and not get lost in all of those games of the mind of different um, yeah, fragmentational uh, experiences of life, and then yeah, learn how to bring that critical mass consciousness into society, and that's how I in my research the greatest changes in human history they did not happen through mass protests and things. And of course, there is a place for everything, but the real changes they happen through one or a small group of individuals instead of fighting the current paradigm,
mm,
actually manifesting another way that is
mhm,
so much more inspiring, and then naturally humanity is moving
mhm.
towards that.
I love that. I love that perspective, and it brings me so much hope because, sometimes when we think about the world's problems, right? The global problems, it feels insurmountable. Like it feels like how can we really create meaningful change? How can we really return back, to these sacred ways and I love that you mentioned that it doesn't take, mass protests and things like that, even though there's a time and place. But I love the hope that it gives to know that even, a small group of united people can make an influence and create massive change, through the ripple effects. right? And that's something that is a goal for me personally. I want to be able to contribute in that way, in whatever way possible, and that's why I think it's so important to have these kind of conversations, to share it with both of our communities, so that it sparks something in someone else, right? And they start to, have a vision for themselves, for their lives, for each other, and for the world. And it really is a beautiful thing. You are doing incredible work. I so admire everything that we shared today and your wisdom, your knowledge, and more than anything, the action that you are, the actions you're taking by your living, and what you're doing. It's so important, so, so important. And so thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. This has been an honor and privilege. Is there anything, any last thoughts or anything like that that you wanted to kind of close off with?
Well, I just want to share that I'm grateful to do my part alongside you. I'm also very inspired by your community and the work that you've been doing. Yeah, what you've been sharing, encouraging through your personal example, and then working with uniting the community and with the youth. And it's so powerful. And I find that's what also keeps me going and keeps rekindling my faith in humanity. We keep weaving the light through the intentional presence and the communities that we have in the world. And so I look forward to our continuous conversation and connection. And yeah, I see that it's up to us. We are the ones we've been waiting for, and then together we each are making a difference. And then it's the unity of diversity.
Mm,
And so that's what's so inspiring me, that, yeah, we're all making a difference, and it's just time to remember that, to
mhm.
remind that, to remind each other that.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Awesome. Amazing. I'm just going to pause the recording.